Hi, I'm working on this piece again tonight, and I thought I would share a little bit of what I'm doing and explain some of the techniques I use to do specific things. I'm at the gallery, so it might be a little bit echoey in here. Hopefully it will sound okay. Okay, so I'm working on this section here. I'm bringing it in so that I can close it and narrow it down into a little shape like this. And it has this three-dimensionality that you can see, a little raised area. And so to get that, I have to keep bringing it in. Otherwise, it would continue to lay flat, and it would make it harder and harder to bring these, this shape together and make it smaller and smaller. And I also wouldn't be able to get the three-dimensionality that I want for it. So I'm going to put it back there. So I'm going to start another row here. See, I've got the camera set up to where I can see it, so I can't zoom in when it's facing that direction. So I will move it close periodically. And I just start making double half hitch knots across. I've already used all the color that I want to use in this section, so it's just blue from here on out. So I won't be doing any color changes or anything like that. I'm just doing a half hitch knot. And I will do one really slowly here. Taking this string, bringing this one over like that, and then bringing it through. And then you do that again. That makes it nice and tight. A lot of times I'll use a single half hitch when I'm wanting to decrease a string out. For example, if I wanted to take this string out, I would just do a single, and then I would come in with this. And then on my next pass, it would make it a lot easier for me to take this string out without leaving a big gap. Just like a slow narrowing is what that creates, instead of abruptly narrowing. So the part that it's tricky when you're doing this is when you're coming down along here, and I don't know how well that translates, but it's a tight little section that I have to work in here because it's at an angle, like going down a little mountain. I'm keeping these strings over here that are the core of the section that goes around the edge, keeping those out of the way. And when I come down to this end, I'm going to probably bring the last string into this section over here. And that's how you slowly start to gather up all of the strings one at a time into this so that it begins to narrow. Sometimes it takes a little bit longer than expected to get that narrowing to happen, because if you force it too soon, you'll have like gaps that don't look really good. So you want it to have a very natural narrowing look. Okay, getting close. Like I said, it's tight because of all this in here, and so I have to kind of tilt this on its side and really make sure that when I pull that knot that it's not catching any of these strings. but that it's also coming in contact with the row above it, because if it doesn't, that'll leave a gap if I don't get that string tight enough up against the row before it. And that's harder to do when you're in a little crevice like this. It just gets kind of tricky. Right, so that's the last string I'm going to knot, and then this one, like I said, I'm going to bring it in here, but I'm not going to bring it in right away, because if I do, that might create a space in between the white threads if I were to pull that blue into there right away. So I'm going to take the string that I was just using as the core, knotting around, and I'm going to pull that. Even though nothing's going to hold it when I let go, that's going to pull right back. So I have to pull it and bring it around. And then when I get this side right here, I'm going to pull it again so that it's still nice and tight up against that. You can see how that wants to jump back and not be tight. You don't want there to be a big space. Can be a little tedious. There we go. Make sure that you don't have any colors popping through, especially when you have really fuzzy yarns like this. They'll want to show through. And then I'm going to grab that string and pull it into this core. I'm going to tighten that one more time and then pull it again. So I just did a double half hitch, but I pulled that string in the middle of the double half hitch instead of at the beginning of it, so that it didn't create a space. And every now and then I'll start to come through here and tighten these, but it's really not necessary to do that until I'm coming around here. You can see some of these get a little bit loose where I've added strings, but those will smooth out when I come around. They get tightened. Okay, now I'm going to add a string. I found a little section of what I was talking about before. I don't know if you can see this, but right here is a little bit of one of these strings popping through. And so I need to go in here and just find out which one it is and pull it. Oh, that was quick. Usually I have to pull on several of these strings before I find the one that's gotten caught. All right, there. So it was a little green that was sticking through. And in the big picture, once this particular piece is finished, it's going to be quite large. And if someone were looking at this, whether it's in a picture or in person, they may not ever see that tiny, tiny little detail of what I would consider a mistake of letting a string be caught. And it happens sometimes. And I have to remind myself, especially if it's a little tiny, tiny, tiny thing that I can't really fix, that I've missed, I have to remind myself that it's not really even going to be visible. It's just going to be a thing that I know is there. And just move on. Okay. Let's see. Okay. Yeah, I want to add a string here. So I've got my crochet thread, this cotton string. I really, really like this particular weight. This is one of the little spools out of a bag that was gifted to me on the night of my opening for this show. A friend that I had only recently gotten to know came in and gave me a whole bag of crochet thread, and I was very excited. Because sometimes people will gift you, if they know you're a fiber artist, they'll gift you with yarn that you don't really connect with or you don't really use in your work, and it's really thoughtful and kind of them to give that to you. But if you can't use it, there's always somebody you can pass it on to. But when somebody who doesn't even know what kind of thread you use gives you your favorite kind of thread, and there was even one in there that was is one of my favorite colors, which is sort of a greener version of this color. But anyway, yeah, she gave me a whole bag of crochet thread. And that's one of them. And actually this one is too. I think I'm using 3. I've got 3, I can't think of the word for it. I want to say bales, but it's not bales. So anyway, I've got in my basket here, I've got 3 that she had given me out of the bag that I'm using for all of this, the white and off-white colors. It was pretty serendipitous. All right, so I don't know if you noticed or not, but this time I've pulled 2 strings. Sometimes when you're coming around to the next row of strings, there will be 2 strings that are like really, really close together. And to try and fit 2 rows in that close together isn't going to look really nice. It's going to be kind of bunchy. So I'll grab both of those strings. And it works out kind of nice because, as you can see, this end tends to feel further along than over here. This one, and I have to keep adding strings to kind of keep from having a gap. So having 2 strings that I can knot once I come over here is kind of nice. I don't have to add a string, which can sometimes be tedious. All right. I don't want this video to be too awful long, but sometimes when coming across, it will start to feel like there's too much of a gap here. And so I know that I want to kind of push this over a little bit to force this string to be closer to, it's hard to describe. This is why I'm not a teacher. And when people ask me, you know, can you teach classes or do tutorial videos, I'll say, I will do a demo video, but I'm not going to do a tutorial. And I will try when I'm working to, you know, explain what it is I'm doing, but I really have a hard time explaining things. I guess if somebody were in person and they could really get in here and look really closely and see what I'm doing, that might be different, but it would definitely have to be a one-on-one situation, not in the classroom. All right, so I don't really need to go through that whole thing again, and it's pretty much just the same thing over and over again, continuing to decrease the number of strings that I have as I go and until it narrows into a point, and then I will work around and do another element that's different, and yeah, so that's it. So you can kind of see what I've been doing here. I hope that was helpful and interesting.